Yes, we are already over halfway through the season. Super excited for these. We got a couple top 25 matches we're going to talk about. But first, we're going to start out with our absolutely favorite segment, the Game of the Week. Joey, why don't you tell the folks what our Game of the Week is?
Well, Mason, we have the number 5 ranked Georgia Bulldogs versus the number 1 ranked Texas Longhorns at 7:30 p.m. at DRK in Austin, Texas.
Yes, we sure do. If you can't tell, we're definitely missing Isaac this week. So, yes, we sure do. Obviously, this is a big game for me just because, I am a Georgia fan. Texas is undefeated right now, coming off a huge win against a really good defense with Oklahoma. Oklahoma obviously having the struggles across the offensive line. I mean, they're taking cornerbacks and turning them into wide receivers because their number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 wide receivers are all out with crazy injuries. And I think they got Nick Anderson back for like 2 plays against Auburn, and then he just went down again. So that's kind of the story for Oklahoma this season. However, Texas playing extremely good ball. I think there's a lot of critics out there that are saying, they haven't really played anybody yet because Michigan and Oklahoma are both teams that are less than average, right, than they have been the past couple years. So,
I mean, yeah, but Texas is still showing that they have an impressive offense, and you know what? Their defense has stepped up. Now, against a better offense, will they be as good as how they've been looking? We'll see. I mean, Michigan hasn't had an offensive identity, especially in that Texas game. And, Oklahoma, as you stated, missing a lot of wideouts, a true freshman at quarterback who honestly didn't play too terribly. Against Oklahoma, I would have liked to see Oklahoma put in Jackson Arnold, who's more of a gunslinger type quarterback, just to see a little difference of an offense, see if that worked out. But they kind of stuck to just one way, which, true freshman, you're just trying to get them minutes, get them game time moments, which I can understand. I think the game was already out of hand. I think they had already kind of lost that game. And, mainly because there was no offense, so the defense kind of crumbled. We've seen that before, Georgia versus Clemson. No offense, the defense eventually crumbles. So this is going to be a great game, man.
Yeah, I completely agree. Georgia, obviously having their struggles on both sides of the ball. Come out, you get a big win against Clemson. Don't even give up a single touchdown to an offense that Clemson hasn't really played anybody yet since then. But they've been doing really, really good. Cade Klubnik is putting up some really good numbers, and that's a really big win for Georgia. But since then, we go and we play Kentucky on the road, and we almost lose. And Kentucky's been shown to be a tougher team this year, but they still just lost to Vanderbilt, who's, don't get me wrong, better program. Obviously took down Alabama, but still it's Vandy. And then we go out and we lose to Alabama in dramatic fashion, coming back down like almost 25 points, I think, to take a lead and then immediately give it up and then throw a pick at the end of the game. And that was probably the biggest game of the year for us. Now we got to go to Texas. We struggled a little bit defensively against Miss State last week. Not sure if playing a little bit softer to avoid injuries before a big game like this. I'm kind of tired of making excuses for this Georgia team this year. I think the bottom line is we're just not as good as we were last year. That's not alluding to a pick, but I'm just saying I don't think that we're the team we were last year. So coming into this game, the ESPN FPI has given Texas a 76% chance to win, and the spread is Texas by 3.5. So the ESPN thinks that this game is not going to be close. They see probably Texas is 76%. I'd probably say they say that Texas is going to win by about 14. The spread, on the other hand, Vegas thinks that it will be a closer game than expected. I'm going first on this one. So, yeah, I mean, obviously Texas, big-time powerhouse this year, looking really good. I want to say they haven't really faced a defense, but they faced 2 really tough defenses. And now that's not to say they don't have their liabilities because, the Oklahoma game is rough. That's a rough game. So they have to go into that one, scheme that one, and even though the Oklahoma lost by 30, it still was a tough game for Texas in the actual physical aspect of it. Not that it was hard to win, but the fact that Texas had to actually, Ewers got sacked a couple times. This is a rough physical game that they always play, and it's a heated rivalry game in mid-season. And so Texas had to go play them. Now they got to come back home and play us. That I think that factors into it. The key is for Georgia in this one, man. You got to establish the run game early, and especially against that Texas defensive line. They're good, but if you can run the inside run effectively, you can take down Texas. So we've got to establish the run game. That's one thing. Another thing you have to do is not turn the ball over, Carson Beck. We turned the ball over 4 times, every single one of them him. 3 interceptions against Bama and 1 fumble in our own territory. 2 of those interceptions in our own territory and that fumble in our territory as well, leading to 3 straight Alabama touchdowns, which gives them the early lead, right? So I think we have a lot to clean up. My friend Matt Gaddy, he just sent me this picture right here. He's playing NCAA 25, and he just said this is how this Saturday needs to go, which is... Yeah, Georgia winning 98-28. And so, I of course, I hope that's the score, which is why I'm going to pick Georgia to win this game. Let me tell you why. I don't think it's going to be that. But every team in the SEC, I've said it this year, every team in the SEC is going to come away with a loss. And I think this is probably the last team that's able to take down Texas. So to me, I got Texas in this one. I know you're making a little some weird face, so I'm excited to hear like what you're thinking. And you know what? I may be being hopeful. Texas is a really good team, but this is not an unwinnable game for Georgia. If Georgia can come out and play the perfect game, establish the run game, pound the ground, make the right throws, get the chunk yardage play, and get in the end zone when you need to, then I think we can win. If Mike Bobo goes out there and Mike Bobos, then we're not going to win this game. But if he can get it together, make some good play calling, and run the freaking ball, I think we can come away with this one.
Yeah, I don't mean to make a face, but I feel like there are arguably 2 teams that are those teams where you can see them going undefeated. Really, there, in my opinion, there's just one. The 2 teams would be Oregon and Texas. Those are the 2 teams who have shown that through adversity they can pull through. The reason I think there's only one, which is Texas, is because Oregon, they have their struggles, man. And it just takes that one game, that one team to really pinpoint those struggles. Meanwhile, Texas, you have them going against Michigan and Oklahoma, 2 really great defenses, and still putting up points. Really solid off. Like, we knew their offense was going to be really good. They've been good for a few years now, but this has been impressive by them against 2 good defenses and still putting up decent points and winning by a good margin. Now, the only question with them is, okay, they haven't really faced an offense, right? So, is their defense really that? Meanwhile, Georgia, it seems like they've taken a flip within the season. So starting out the season, their defense was it. Their offense wasn't. Their defense is what was carrying the games. The Clemson game, the defense was shutting down the Clemson offense. So eventually the offense could, put up points. Against Kentucky, offense still couldn't put up points, but that defense was there, and that was the reason really why y'all won the game. And then all of a sudden, it just seemed like it flipped. And, that Alabama game, you bring up the multiple turnovers, and honestly, it could be that instance like the Clemson game where the offense can't do anything. That defense is going to fall apart eventually if it's a really good offense, like Alabama's at the time.
Right.
So I was thinking that, and then we watched the Mississippi State game, and I never thought Mississippi State would put up as many points as they did against Georgia, and that was really concerning to me because the offense still is not there. It's performing better, but it's not like Stetson Bennett, Georgia offense, and it's definitely not that defense. And when you pair the 2 together, it just seems like Texas is the hands down, no doubt. Again, I don't know necessarily. I don't want to be like, there's no doubt Texas is going to win. But I have to pick Texas for this. Everything is stacking in their favor. Their offense is too impressive. And right now their defense is looking to be impressive. I wouldn't say it's better than Georgia's because Georgia defense is, it's known as Georgia's defense. So, but I think Texas comes away with it. They've already matched up against 2 really good defenses. What makes a third, right? Yeah,
and if Georgia's going to win this game, they obviously have to have, like I said, a perfect offensive game. Even if the defense struggles, because, Texas got some playmakers, dude. Another thing to look at, too, is Isaiah Bond was injured against Oklahoma last week. So he's questionable at the moment. We'll see how that turns out, obviously, Saturday. It might probably end up being a game-time decision. I'm assuming he'll be okay, so we'll still have to play him. But, this is a good wide receiver. And the other thing that Texas is going to struggle with, I think, is with our defensive line, they're on their, second and third string backs. But so are we. So that's actually going to be really interesting to see how that plays out, because Branson Robinson last week took a pretty hard. I think he injured his knee. Don't know how long he's out. It wasn't like an ACL. It wasn't like an ACL tear or anything like that, but it was bad enough that he had to leave the game. So we'll see how that goes. But we're going to be rocking with Trevor Etienne and Nate Frazier, the true freshman, who is an absolute dog. I mean, he's literal, but he's still working on his blocking ability as a true freshman against some of these bigger defensive ends. But he's playing well as far as being a shifty back. He reminds me a lot of DeAndre Swift. He's really shifty. He can, if he gets in space, he make you miss. He's going to go. So
now the big thing I think is going to establish who wins this game, though, is who can establish the run game first and more dominantly.
Yes, I agree.
This past game for Texas against Oklahoma, that run game was really good. Mm-hmm. Can it carry over against Georgia? And with Georgia, can Etienne continue to have as good of a game as he has been? Now, I don't look at Etienne as a true running back. He's more of a receiving back, but he's been really running the ball, nailing people in the teeth and all that. He's gotten bigger. So who can establish first? And yeah, that really determines who's going to win this game.
And just to give a quick stat, too, you got Trevor Etienne at 63 carries, 335 yards, and 4 touchdowns on the season. And the most rushing yards for Texas is Quintrevion Wisner. He's got 45 carries, 278 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. I mean, and also because you have the loss of C.J. Baxter at the beginning of the season, and they also have Jadon Blue, who's really good. He's really good, you know. So we'll see what happens with that game.